Good morning. Welcome to this very special online training. I'm so glad to have you here. It's called The Importance of Music in Your Homeschool. My name is Justina, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about this training because I love talking about the importance of music in our homeschool. It's such an important subject. In fact, I'll say that I believe that music is essential. It is an essential part of education and an essential part of being a human being. So I'm excited to have you here because I also want to show you what a powerful tool music is for boosting the brain and enhancing every area of education. I also want to make music accessible to everyone. And as a parent, I want to give you some tools to help you add music to your children's lives. My hope is that this training will have an immediate impact on your life. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, welcome to the importance of including music in your homeschool. So I'm glad to have you here. And I know that whenever you're watching an online training like this, that it could be easy to be distracted by lots of things, right? You probably have your kids at home, and I really want to encourage you to give yourself this time, this next hour, just for yourself. Silence your cell phone, turn off your alerts, get everyone situated for just a little bit here so that this can be your time. For the next hour or so, give yourself the gift of focus. And I just want to tell you that if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A. I'm going to do some talking first, and then if you have questions at the end, I will answer those questions. So you can put them in the chat, or at the end, we can unmute you and you can ask me your questions. Of course, in case you don't know anything about me, I want to introduce myself. I'm Justina of Just Classical. And I founded Just Classical because I have a passion for music, and I've been teaching music for over 20 years. I've been a lifelong musician. I'm also the mom of 3 blessings, and I've taught my children since they were in the womb. Because you see, I taught early childhood music classes from before I was even married or pregnant. So when I was pregnant, my kids were still at the music classes with me in the womb. So they have had the experience of music classes since I was pregnant with them. And I have a degree in music therapy, and I worked in music therapy for a few years, but I really didn't like working for somebody else, and it was a little hard to market music therapy. So I started teaching early childhood music classes and started my own business that way. And I've been teaching those for over 20 years. And more recently, I wrote an online music course called The Composer Detective. And I also have a membership, which includes a little bit more than The Composer Detective, which is a music appreciation course for families. I also, in my membership, do a little bit of music theory and performance. So now that you know a little bit about me, let me ask you something. Does this sound like you? You are planning the next homeschool year and you're trying to decide on your curriculum, especially electives, for this next year. Or does this sound like you? You want your child to have a music education, but you lack the knowledge of where to get started and what and how to teach. Or does this sound like you? You want your children to have a well-rounded education, but you don't feel confident in teaching all subjects. Maybe you've considered adding music or art, but you're not sure how to fit everything in with so many core subjects. Or, it doesn't have to be an or, it can be an and. You just don't have the time for another curriculum that requires 2 to 3 hours of prep for every hour of lessons, especially for subject areas you do not feel confident teaching. Well, if any or all of those sound familiar, I want you to know you're in exactly the right place, and today's training is going to give you clarity on how music enhances every area of development and education, as well as a starting place for teaching music to your own children so that you will know where to start and you will have confidence in teaching them. But before we dive in, I want to give you a quick preview so you know what's ahead and so you can know what to expect from today's masterclass. So what's ahead? We're going to talk about how music development perfectly correlates with normal childhood development in listening, motor, language, social, emotional, and cognitive development. We're also going to talk about how music boosts the brain in academic areas like the core areas of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and reasoning and memorization. And we're also going to talk about how music helps the brain in non-academic areas like listening, motor skills, emotional growth, creativity, and enjoyment of life. And we're going to talk about why music education and appreciation are essentials, not just electives, for your child's education. And I'm also going to share with you about my music appreciation course, The Composer Detective, and why it might just be the thing you need right now. Okay, so let's ask the question. This is the key question of the whole thing that I'm talking about today, the importance of music and fine arts in your homeschool. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? So that's a great question, right? Why do we even want to add it? There's just so much other stuff going on. It's a question I've asked myself, and I've heard from others many times. After all, we have so many subjects we feel like we need to cover in our children's educations, right? And as homeschooling parents, we already feel overwhelmed, and we're wondering, what should my first grader know? Or my third grader? Or my sixth grader? Or my ninth grader? Can I even homeschool high school? Right? There's a lot to think about. So I will admit that it is easy to put a high priority on academics and learning the reading, writing, and arithmetic. And these days, we hear all about STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math. So when searching for curriculum, it is easy to get in the mindset of finding the essentials, right? I put quotes around that, the essentials, and then only considering music and art as electives. Maybe we don't really need those. Well, here I ask that question. Shouldn't we just focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic? Or STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math? Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. As I mentioned in the introduction, I have a degree in music therapy, and I have had the opportunity to study how music affects the brain with my training from college. And I worked with clients in music therapy for a few years. And then I heard about the early childhood music program called Music Garden, which I could teach in my own studio from home. So I was delighted to find this program because it used music activities that were similar to what I had used in music therapy. They were very goal oriented, and it enhanced the brain development of young children. So I taught early childhood music classes for several years before I got married and had my own children. And then I was able to take my own children through the music classes. And I was able to see firsthand and on an intimate level how music helped my own children in every stage of child development and enhanced brain development. So there you can see a few of the pictures of me teaching my kids. And here they are now. Okay, my kids are teenagers now. Yes, we have chickens, all right? They love their chickens. And they're very well-rounded kids, right? They have animals that they love. They play the piano. They all play the piano. They all continue their music. They are athletes. They all play basketball. My daughter throws the shot put and discus. My older daughter. My younger will probably eventually. My son plays football. They love history. And as a family, we love to visit historical sites as well as to learn new things. And so they love history. They love new things, right? They're avid readers. And my son excels in math. My other daughters are very creative and artistic, not just musically. So I have seen how their early childhood music education has helped them grow in all of these areas. So that's a little bit more about me, but this story is not really about me and my children. Now, your story may look and sound a little different than mine, and perhaps you don't have a music background, or you haven't started music with your children yet, and perhaps you have questions about the value of music in your homeschool. So that's exactly what this masterclass is all about. And this is a topic I love talking about because being involved in music has had such an impact on my life and on my siblings' lives and on my children's lives. And I want to show everyone what a powerful tool music is for boosting the brain and enhancing every area of education. And I also want to make music accessible to everybody. And as a parent, I want to give you some tools so that you can add music to your children's lives. All right, so let's go back to my key question. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? Well, I'm going to start with a quote from Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey was a radio newscaster known for his program called The Rest of the Story. And he says, "Music is everywhere, in birdsong and in bubbling brooks and in laughter, even in the stars. Music is a universal language that transcends time and space. Music is one of the 7 forms of human intelligence, all equal in stature and in potential. And yet education, as is almost totally geared to nurturing linguistic and logical mathematical abilities alone, leaving the 5 other forms, including music, neglected. Our schools tend to refine intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. And undisciplined emotions keep getting us into trouble. The ugliest headlines are about somebody who may have been smart as all get out. Smart enough to be a bank executive or a politician or a scientist. But if emotionally colorblind, he's an unguided missile, inevitably destined to self-destruct. Without the arts, including music, we risk graduating young people who are right-brained damaged. For anyone to grow up complete, music education is imperative. Case histories on file with the National Commission on Music Education uncover exciting correlation between the study of music and such critical workplace performance factors as self-esteem, self-discipline, the ability to work in groups, and higher cognitive and analytical skills. Music in schools, what little there is considered to be ancillary to real education as something of a curricular icing, right? We just call it an elective. If it is to be reestablished as basic to education, as fundamental to being an educated person, then educators and performers, composers and publishers, and those in music-related industries must close ranks to restore educational balance in schools. How does one plausibly argue for spending school money on music when we are graduating illiterates? Should we not be putting all our emphasis on reading, writing, and math? The back to basic curricula, while it has merit, ignores the most urgent void in our present system: absence of self-discipline. The arts, inspiring, indeed requiring self-discipline, may be more basic to our nation's survival than traditional credit courses. Presently, we are spending 29 times more on science than on the arts, and the result so far is worldwide intellectual embarrassment. All right, so Paul Harvey says some beautiful truths about music and its importance in education. And yes, he's a radio announcer. I'm going to share quotes and studies with you later on to show this is not just an opinion. It's not just his opinion. It's not just my opinion. But I am going to share again one part of his quote because it is so it sums it up so well. For anyone to grow up complete, well, I guess it starts up here at the top. Without the arts, including music, we risk graduating young people who are right brain damaged. For anyone to grow up complete, music education is imperative. Case histories on file with the National Commission on Music Education uncover exciting correlation between the study of music and such critical workplace performance factors as self-esteem, self-discipline, the ability to work in groups, and higher cognitive and analytical skills. Okay, lots of big words here, lots of things. I'm just going to take you through now why. Again, why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? Well, Paul Harvey's quote sums it up really well, but I'm going to keep showing you why. Another quote is from the retired chairman and chief executive officer of Xerox Corporation, David Kearns. He asks the very question we're asking today: why arts and education? Why education at all, though, right? Why education at all? The purpose of education is not simply to inform, but to enrich and enlighten, to provide insights into life as it has been led and as it may be led. No element of the curriculum is better suited to that task than arts education. Okay, we want our children to have an education, not just so they have a bunch of knowledge knocking around in their heads, right? We want them to have understanding and eventually wisdom, because we want their lives to be enriched. We want them to be enlightened. We want them to have insights into life as it has been led and as it may be led. And as David Kearns says, no element of the curriculum is better suited to that task than arts education. And why? Well, music boosts your child's brain power in all areas of academics, and even transcends academics to emotional, creative, and even character-building growth and enjoyment of life. Music is not just entertainment. Music is not just an elective. Music is essential in education. Why? Why is this? Why is it essential? Well, let's start with this first one, because music development correlates with every aspect of child development. All right, we're going to start by looking at normal child development and compare it to music development as a starting place for music in your homeschool. So first of all, child development. Well, the very first organ to function in the womb is the ear. You see, the heart of a child in the womb starts beating at about 20 days after conception. Okay, so there's conception, and 21 days later, you've got a heartbeat. And then at 40 days, the brain waves are measurable. And by 2 months in the womb, all the body systems are functioning. And at 3 months, the baby can start hearing, or at 12 weeks. So the baby can hear at 12 weeks. And studies show that a baby can remember what he or she heard as early as 20 weeks. So Dr. Susan Ludington-Ho, an authority on infant stimulation, says, the fetal heartbeat changes significantly to different types of music. Both before and after birth, babies are really bothered by strong beat and loud music, but they love soft music and are especially thrilled by Vivaldi. So one example of this is of a professional pianist whose baby began to thrash about in her womb whenever she played the composer Chopin's works. Frédéric Chopin has some very aggressive sounding piano pieces or marches. And so the baby got agitated whenever this mother would play these pieces. So she had to stop playing these compositions. But when she played Mozart, the baby seemed very happy in her womb. And then another mother went to a rock concert, and her baby in her womb kicked her ribs so hard that one of her ribs was broken. So the babies can hear in the womb. And the ear serves two purposes. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, the ear serves two purposes, right? We all know that it serves the purpose of hearing and listening, but it also provides balance, which is called the vestibular function. And thus, listening is the cornerstone of development. Now, I'm going to show you two charts here. Okay, one is the stages of normal childhood development. Okay, so a child develops first the listening apparatus and vestibular apparatus develop. And from that come motor development and then language. And once you have language, you can have social interactions. And then you've got your emotions and you're learning to control your emotions. And then, of course, there's cognitive development. So when you look at a baby and you watch it go through these stages, this is what you see. Now, some of them are going to continue to develop along with language and social continue to develop. It's not that they don't have emotions when they're little, but there comes a point in their development where they're learning to control those emotions and interpret emotions. All right, so there's childhood development, and then there's musical development. Look what it starts with. It starts with listening and vestibular, right? Because music is sound. And it also progresses to movement and then vocalization, ensemble is the form of social engagement, right? There's creative and read write. Okay, so let's put those together. So now you can see that music development perfectly correlates with normal child development. So we start with listening, vestibular, motor and movement correlate, language and vocal correlate, social and ensemble correlate, emotional creative correlate, and cognitive read write correlate. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to go through those one by one. So listening is the cornerstone of development. We often ignore how important it is to listen because we live in a highly visual world, right? Where children and adults spend hours engaging our eyes on televisions, computers, video games, and other electronic devices. But listening is essential. You see, the baby first orders its world through sound, since a baby is unable to see in the womb and its sight is unfocused at birth. So we're parents here, right? And we know we've all had our little newborn baby, and we can see the baby can't really focus, can't really see, but that baby is able to hear and distinguish his or her mother's voice in the womb. Like I said, remember, the babies start hearing at 12 weeks and they start remembering what they heard at 20 weeks. And so just a side comment, but that's why sometimes there are bonding issues with an adopted baby, because the baby isn't hearing the voice of the mother who carried him or her in the womb. But in order to communicate and develop language skills, the child must learn to listen. And it's important to learn to discriminate. Sorry, I am tripping over my words. Let's try that again. It is important to learn to discriminate between meaningful sound and noise. And also, well, I'll go back and try that again. So in order to communicate and develop language skills, one must learn to listen. It is important to learn to discriminate between meaningful sound and noise. Also, listening heightens the development of attention span, concentration, impulse control, and social skills. And I'll take social skills a step further. Social skills, listening helps you develop the social skills of learning to listen to others, obviously, communication, and sensitivity and compassion. Now, music is sound, so listening is going to enhance, well, let me say that again. Music is going to enhance listening because music is sound. And when you're listening to music, you are learning to discriminate pitch, rhythm, voice, also called timbre, and when involved in music, the ear is being engaged and trained to listen. The neural pathways of the brain are firing, and the proper foundation is laid for further development. And you can enjoy music at all ages through listening. All right, so listening is the foundation of development, both child development and musical development. But let's move on to motor. Now, as the ear is the control center for the two functions of listening and vestibular apparatus, which controls balance, it should be no surprise that motor skills are the second stage of development. There is an intimate psychophysical involvement between a sound, hearing, and listening, the ear's cochlear function, and movement in terms of balance, position, and posture, the ear's vestibular function. Children by nature move constantly, so movement activities meet them where they are at. Also, physical movement helps children develop an internal sense of beat that seems to correlate with reading and math abilities. That is a quote from Jane Healy, who wrote an amazing book called Endangered Minds. So this sense of movement or steady beat is not merely hearing, but feeling the beat. Okay, and that sense of beat, that feeling the beat, that hearing the beat, that's going to correlate with the reading and math abilities. And so when you're in development, for motor and movement, you want steady beat activities in your little child's life to prepare them for further learning. And why is that? Well, steady beat activities provide a sense of security. From in the womb, babies are used to hearing the sound of the mother's heartbeat and breathing. And if you've had a little baby, you know that moving that baby in a steady function, like rocking or bouncing them up and down, and a steady sh, 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 sh sound, or a sound machine with the steady beat, that is comforting to that baby. So that's why steady beat activities, movement or sound, provide that sense of security. Also, steady beat activities order a child's world. They provide structure. Steady beat activities also develop the oral motor connection, developing both parts of the ear's function. And they are the basis for developing rhythm. If you can't keep a steady beat, then you're going to have trouble with music later on and rhythm. And as we already heard from Jane Healy, steady beat correlates with reading and math abilities. Now, music obviously is a motivating factor in motor development, for the natural response to music is to move to it. So let's see if this will play. I've got this little video, okay, of this kid, right? When young children hear a song with a strong beat, I often see them do this dance, right, of bouncing up and down. They're learning to develop that internal sense of beat. So the kid is trying to do some other dancing, right? But the main thing is he's bouncing up and down with his whole body, because he's trying to get that sense of internal beat going. Okay, that's a pretty fun one. And then, but music is also, it provides the structure for movement. So the beat serves as an endpoint for movement and a rhythmic cue. And it's an outside source of pacing and provides the auditory feedback. So music and movement activities provide kinesthetic learning opportunities. You experience the body move, you build muscular movement memory, you focus on feeling aspects of creative expression, you aid in recall and in understanding of language and events, or I should say the music aids in recall. The music and the movement aid in recall and in understanding of language and events, and they stimulate participation. Further, movement activities are the foundation for cognitive learning. They aid in the development of purposeful movement, impulse control, gross and fine motor coordination, eye-hand coordination, spatial concepts, and problem solving. There is so much involved just with music and movement, right? Okay, so we know that listening is the foundation of development, and next they go on to motor or movement, and the next thing in development is language. And of course, the corollary for musical development is vocal. But music also does imitate language in a lot of ways. So for example, children at first begin with nonverbal communication. And then they say one word at a time, just like the word ball. And then they connect nouns and verbs into short sentences. Okay, so now they've got patterns. And as they hear language spoken by adults and experiment actively with language themselves, they begin to speak in more complex sentences, modeling what they heard from the important people in their lives. Language, of course, is important for communication and for higher level reasoning. And what do we see in language? It has patterns of letters, words, phrases, and sentences. Language is made up of conversations, and conversation involves questions and answers, periods of silence, times where you listen, and response. Well, music imitates this. Okay, just as language has these patterns of letters, words, phrases, and sentences, so does music. We might not call them words or letters or sentences in music, but we certainly talk about musical phrases. But the individual notes are like the letters. Okay, and then you can build those up. So they share the same kind of patterns. And also music imitates conversation. Phrases in music include questions and answers, or silence, or listening and response. So as a child is exposed to the structure of music, guess what happens? Those language and communication patterns are reinforced. And just as a side note, because of the structure of music, because it puts words into a predictable time format, a child will not stutter when singing. So let's move on to the social development. Okay, so listening is the cornerstone, then they develop motor skills, language skills, and then social skills. So children must learn to interact with other people, both other children and adults, in an acceptable way. So what do they learn from social skills? They learn impulse control, like don't hit the kid who has the toy you want, right? And they learn to take turns. They also learn to use their words to work out conflicts, and they have to learn how to be sensitive and compassionate towards others' needs as well as their own. Now, one of the most amazing aspects of music, in my opinion, is the social aspect of an ensemble. So an ensemble is just a group of people coming together to make music. So it can be a group of voices or a group of instruments. Now, other activities do promote social development, like team sports, but these are aggressive interactions, which certainly have their place. Music, however, is an opportunity for people to get together, to work together, to create something beautiful. Whether it's unison singing, that's a type of musical ensemble, many voices singing the same part together, or singing in parts, which is harmony, diverse parts that form exquisite harmonies. And music is an opportunity to learn positive social interaction through listening and expressing. And ensemble activities are also important because they develop creative expression, impulse control, concentration, because you have to focus on your own part, even though there's other parts going on, right? Communication, that give and take, and the understanding of parts and phrases in music. All right, so next in development is emotional or creative expression. And children become more aware of their emotions as they get a little older. Not that they don't have emotions as a toddler, but they're certainly not trying to control them, are they? So as they mature, then the emotional development begins to take place so they can learn what their emotions are and how to control them. So they are seeking, and as parents, we are seeking to help them to find ways to express their emotions in healthy ways. aggressive behavior, that's appropriate in competitive sports, for example. So that is an emotional outlet. So emotional expression is simply becoming aware of their emotions and controlling their emotions. And emotional expression correlates in music with creative expression. As Hans Christian Andersen, the fairy tale writer, says, where words fail, music speaks. Now, there's an element we almost can't use words to describe in music, right? We can't describe how music can speak to us without words. It's very hard to put into words the way music can touch us and touch our souls or soothe our emotions. And that's why this quote is, well, one of the best ways to put it. Where words fail, music speaks. So music can be an important outlet for expressing ourselves. And that's also why there's a field called music therapy, and why many of us turn to listening to a favorite song for comfort, or to praise God, or for motivation, or we might turn to playing an instrument for emotional outlet or creative outlet. So by exposing a child to music, he or she may find a wonderful outlet for his or her emotions and creative expression. Okay, and the pinnacle of development is cognitive reasoning. Okay, this is going to come a little later in development, preteens, teens, and continue throughout our lifetimes. So in cognitive development, children are reading, then writing, and then ultimately thinking for themselves. And we also want them to learn responsibility, so they will be responsible adults who contribute to society and forge new technology and develop relationships for our progress as a civilization. Okay, that's what we want from our cognitive reasoning skills. Now, music, the correlation here is there's cognitive reasoning and then there's reading and writing music. And it helps us with the other aspects of cognitive reasoning, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, with STEM becoming STEAM. So science, technology, engineering, and math, they've actually added an A for arts. And that's because it actually really does help with the cognitive reasoning and creative outlet. But anyway, music. In music, reading and writing are the means of expression. And as one can read music, one can participate in higher levels of music making. And one's also not just going to understand the notes on a page, but the genre of the piece and the nuances of expression. And one can analyze the structure of the music, such as the chord development, the chord progressions, what makes the music move forward. And then one will ultimately be able to write new music as well. Now, not everybody is meant to write music. Perhaps that's maybe not everybody's gifts, but it is part of the ultimate output or cognitive reasoning of music. And it's what music does to help in our development. So let's go back to our question that we've been asking. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? Well, as I said, here it is. Look at all the music that music development does for childhood development. So music enhances every stage of development. But also, music is interactive. Now, I've already mentioned that we live in an overly visually stimulating society. Everything has become visual. So another factor to consider about involvement in music is that it is interactive. Now, TV and computer software producers purport to offer educational programming, but it is actually passive learning. Listening to music can also be passive, mind you, which is why I give you some which is why I like to talk about getting involved in music actively. But let's first stress the importance of interactive learning rather than passive. So I don't have an extra slide here for you, so you'll just have to look about how music is interactive. But I'm going to quote Jane Healy again from her book, Endangered Minds. And she says that while there is, of course, a genetic element to intelligence, environments can shape our brains and our intelligence levels. So studies were done with rats in which some were given an enriched environment with playmates and toys such as wheels and balls, where they could explore, push, roll, climb, etc. And then other rats were in impoverished conditions of merely living in a cage. Now those in the enriched interactive environment developed larger brain cortexes by as much as 11%. Interestingly, when rats were given an opportunity to watch other rats in an enriched environment, their brains did not grow any more than those of rats in the impoverished cage. The point here is that, as the author Jane Healy states, children need stimulation and intellectual challenges, but they must be actively involved in their learning, not responding passively while another brain, their teachers or parents, laboriously develops new synapses in their behalf. Okay, now I get it. It's a study with rats, right? But if rats can increase their brain capacity by 11% or develop larger brain cortexes, then what does that say about humans? And we as humans, much more so than when I first started sharing my class like this. I've been teaching this class for 20 years because I've been teaching this class as long as I was teaching early childhood music. So in 20 years, things have changed a lot. We have all these little devices we can carry around with us, our phones. And I see little kids all the time watching videos and interacting. Oh, not interacting though, right? Passively sitting and watching videos or playing video games, but the video games are not really interactive either. So we are not doing our children a favor with letting them be on visual devices all the time, whereas music is interactive. And so that's why it is so important in our children's development. So also, music is important in our children's lives, and because it promotes family interaction. We live, like I said, in this age of electronic devices and visual distractions. And although this may not be as true for a homeschool audience, both parents often work and families may be spending less time together. So whatever your family or work situation is, music can be an enjoyable activity for the whole family to participate in. And no matter what your skill level or age, every member of the family can participate in music in some way. Listening, you can listen to songs together or dance together, right? Move. You can play an instrument or keep a beat. And when I say play an instrument, it doesn't have to be a highly skilled instrument. It can be some rhythm sticks or a drum where they're just keeping a steady beat and participating. So spending a few minutes each day singing to and with your children, especially when they are young, you can develop a bond with them as you share that experience together. And this can be repeated day after day, and you may build memories together. So rather than each family member doing their own thing, each on a device or all watching television, music is an activity that brings everyone together. It's a cultural tradition that we need to continue to pass down to our children in our overwired world. All right, so if we understand that music correlates with and enhances every stage of brain development, wouldn't you want to make this a core subject in your homeschool? Well, let's review by looking at it from another angle. Music boosts academic and cognitive abilities. Now, we've actually already talked about this, right? But I'm going to approach it from a slightly different angle with some data for you as well. So, number one, music boosts language processing, such as reading and writing and comprehension. So I already talked about this. Music imitates the patterns of language, conversation, and communication. So as a child is exposed to structure of music, language and communication patterns are reinforced. Okay, again, looking at it from the academic side, music boosts math skills. Now, I didn't talk about this one because you see, reading music involves learning quarter, half, and whole notes, which are essentially fractions. So when a student is learning rhythm, he or she is also learning to count, and not just counting numbers, but the music student is using logic to count out the rhythms and bars as he or she progresses through the piece. So music requires the student to perform mathematical processes like division on the fly. There are many musical concepts which have mathematical counterparts. And so, of course, research also shows a link between music education and success in school math. A study by the Royal Conservatory of Music in Canada, for example, found that students in the arts program scored significantly higher on mathematical tests of computation and estimation than did students in a control group. Okay, another way that music boosts academics is that music helps with analysis, critical thinking, and reasoning. So in learning to read music, one can participate in higher levels of music making, and students who have early musical training will develop the areas of the brain related to language and reasoning. So the left side of the brain is better developed with music, and songs can help imprint information on young minds. Music helps with memorization. Music is going to help with memorization. Of course, the best way to memorize something is using a song or rhythm. Think of the ABC song. We know our ABCs because we memorized a song. If we start our children in memorizing the most basic facts of language, we start with a song. And my children have memorized a lot of stuff. We were in a program called Classical Conversations, where in the early years, they memorized a lot of stuff, and a lot of it is to music. And something they've memorized is the full Westminster Shorter Catechism, and that has 107 questions. And they were able to memorize the whole thing because I actually wrote songs for all of those questions. That's a lot of information, but music made it easy and enjoyable to memorize. So also memorizing music pieces for performance correlates with verbal memory skills. That is, memorizing music actually helps improve non-musical memory too. So a study from the Chinese University of Hong Kong shows this very thing. Children who had begun or continued music instruction exhibited significant verbal memory improvement after a year. Also, another study at the Rotman Research Institute in Toronto, Canada, revealed that children with musical training demonstrated greater improvement on memory tests throughout the course of a year than children without the musical training. And the co-author of this study, Takako Fujioka, explains that playing music requires the brain to solve the problems how to allocate attention and memory toward complex tasks. So music boosts the brain's ability to memorize. All right, so fifth, music contributes to general academic success and increased test scores. Now, with all the benefits that music brings to kids' language, math, memory, and self-assessment, there is no surprise that there is a strong relationship between music and general academic success. Studies have shown that students with music training scored higher in English and math than students who had no music at all. And the College Board says that high school students in music programs score higher than their non-musical peers on the SAT. And a survey, now this is from a while ago now, but a survey from 1994 indicated that music majors as a group had the highest acceptance rate to medical school. And then a study from 2007 from the University of Kansas found that students in elementary schools with high quality music education programs scored, get this, around 22% higher in English and 20% higher in math scores on standardized tests in comparison with schools with inferior music programs. And this is just, they both had music, but some of them just had a better music program and scored that much better. And then music also impacts long-term success. Students with a music background tend to rank higher in common measures of long-term success, such as educational attainment and income. So a 2007 poll by Harris Interactive found that nearly 9 out of 10 people with postgraduate education had participated in music while in school. And 83% of those with incomes of $150,000 or more had had a music education. Also, the College Board's study found that high school students who participated in band or orchestra reported the lowest lifetime and current use of drugs and alcohol. Now, I don't know if just band or orchestra, I don't know if vocal students, but you know, those rock bands, they like their drugs and alcohol, but those who participated in band and orchestra, probably choir could be put in there too, have a lower lifetime use of drugs and alcohol. Well, we don't really want our kids in that, so we want the long-term success. So overall, participation in music grows the brain and keeps it active as it develops more neural pathways. And Dr. Eric Rasmussen, the chair of the Early Childhood Music Department at the Peabody Preparatory of the Johns Hopkins University, says, there's some good neuroscience research that children involved in music have larger growth of neural activity than people not in music training. When you're a musician and you're playing an instrument, you have to be using more of your brain. Okay, also though, we talked about how music affects the brain in academic areas, but how about non-academic areas? And again, we've covered some of this, but I just wanted you to see it from a different angle so that you can see how important music is in education. So equally or more importantly, music affects the brain in non-academic areas, which help us and our children to become better people. So Annie Patel, an associate professor of psychology at Tufts University and the author of Music, Language, and the Brain, says, if we know how and why music changes the brain in ways that affect other cognitive abilities, this could have a real impact on the value we put on it as an activity in the schools, not to mention all the impact it has on emotional development, emotional maturity, social skills, stick-to-itiveness, things we typically don't measure in school, but which are hugely important in a child's ultimate success. So what are these other areas which music is developing the brain? Well, the other ways that music develops the brain, and we've already talked about these, so I just put them all in one slide to go through quickly, right? Music is developing the brain through listening. We don't usually measure that academically, do we? Or music develops the brain through motor skills and movement. Again, I'm pretty much just going through the child development, right? Social skills, emotional expression, and creative expression. Now I'm going to spend a little more time on creative expression again because there's a few more things to say about it. So employers identify creativity as one of the top 5 skills important for success in the workforce. That is an important consideration because we hear a lot about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but there's a whole movement that's turned it into STEAM. And that's because we need the processes of creativity and innovation, which the arts are able to give. So now we've added that A for arts. So it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So even the workforce is saying we need that creativity and innovation that come from the arts, which would be art and music. And today I'm really focusing mostly on music, but the arts, the fine arts, the creative arts, such as studying arts history and creating art, are also important and benefit your child's development. All right, so we can't just have STEM, guys. We can't just have science, technology, engineering, and math, and we can't just have reading, writing, and arithmetic. I did hear a quote from another speaker one time who said, it's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's reading, writing, arithmetic, and rhythm. And he was advocating for singing in our homeschooling. Okay, so I went through these: listening, motor skills, movement, social skills, emotional expression, creative expression, and they need an active learning environment. I talked about the rat study, growing our brains through active learning, not just passive. And then the last one is enjoyment and beauty and life. Okay, we can't measure that, can we? But it is important. It is important, an important part of being human, to enjoy beauty and life, and music helps us to do that. We seek beauty. When we sing or listen to music, we are also enjoying the beauty and ministering to our own souls, which can lift us into a whole new world. So this quote, "This then is the purpose of a course in music appreciation, not to teach us facts about composers, but to help us to love their works, to make Beethoven's symphonies as essential to us as are the plays of Shakespeare. In short, to give us a new sense organ for the perception of beauty." We want to enjoy life, and studying music appreciation, studying music and participating in it, and artists and their lives and their works, these are all things that are going to give us a new sense organ for the perception of beauty so that we can enjoy our lives. Ideally, we want our children to experience success throughout life itself. The benefits may be psychological, spiritual, and physical, and with the challenge of making life meaningful and fulfilled. And to reach a higher state of development by participating in music, we also develop self-expression, which in turn leads to self-esteem, which ultimately helps us to succeed at these challenges. So one more quote here. Casals, okay, that's referring to Pablo Casals, a famous cellist. Casals says music fills him with the wonder of life and the incredible marvel of being a human. Ives, that refers to Charles Ives, a composer, an American modern composer. Ives says it expands his mind and challenges him to be a true individual. Bernstein, that refers to Leonard Bernstein, also a composer, an American composer and conductor. Bernstein says music, is enriching and ennobling. To me, that sounds like a good cause for making music an integral part of every child's education. Studying music and the arts elevates children's education, expands students' horizons, and teaches them to appreciate the wonder of life. Is it really all about academics? No, we want a wonder of life. We want to enjoy life. So that's from the U.S. Secretary of Education, Richard W. Riley, from 1999. So he's not currently the Secretary of Education. All right, so music is a powerful tool for education. And I'll go further to say music is essential because we see that it can dramatically improve and enrich everybody. So it makes sense to push music education and to allow young generations to gain these wonderful benefits, right? Higher intelligence through increased creative thinking, problem solving, and physically stronger brains, a higher perception of life, including better attitudes, strong desires to achieve and fulfill, and higher self-esteem, better developed discipline, study skills, concentration, communication, and team skills, which transfer from education through to career, and a better understanding of communities and societies. So, where does this leave us? What should you do with all of this information? Well, involve your child in music, of course. Music is a more potent instrument than any other for education, and children should be taught music before anything else. Okay, that goes back to Plato. Ancient history, right? Even in ancient times, they knew music was important. All right, so that brings us to the obvious question. How can you add music education to your homeschool easily to enjoy all these brain boosting benefits? Now, we don't want it to be hard, right? Hopefully, after all of this, you see how important music is, the value of music, that it is essential in your homeschool, and you want to add it, but maybe you don't feel comfortable. You're like, it's too hard. But how can we add it easily? Well, you can do it on your own because maybe you have a music background and you're like, I can totally do this. I just needed this little push from you, Justina, to say, I need to add this to my homeschool and make it an essential core subject. And I know that as homeschool moms, a lot of us love to research. So you can go to the library for books and you can search YouTube for videos of recordings and you can do all the work on your own. But maybe you don't feel adequate, or maybe you don't want to put in the time even if you do have a music background. Because while you may be able to do the research to study about the orchestra and composers and different genres of music, etc., if you don't have a music background, you still won't be able to teach your child an instrument. And even if you do have a music background, maybe teaching your child an instrument is not always the easiest thing. Well, another option is, and I totally recommend this if it is possible for you, go out and enroll in in-person classes or private lessons. So for years, I taught early childhood music classes. I taught music garden classes. There's other groups that do early childhood music, such as, well, now I can't remember the other ones. They were on the tip of my tongue. So music garden, well, you can look them up. There's like mommy and me classes. So I guess it's been a while since I've taught those classes and thought about the competition, but I have taught music garden classes. You can look up in-person classes for you, and you can start doing those as early as a toddler. As early as your newborn baby. So as soon as I had my babies, I kept teaching those classes, and I had my newborn babies in the classes because there was a baby class. And that kind of class, you do very soothing singing, you rock your baby, you bounce your baby, you do finger plays or body awareness activities. And then toddlers, there's tons of movement, right? Toddler classes are tons of movement. And then as they get a little older, you listen to different distinct sounds. And so these in-person classes are fabulous. And they give you a time that you go to a class with your child, you're doing something interactive, and you're there together until a certain age, right? After preschool, you're probably not going to want to be in a class with your child, or they might want to be a little more independent, I should say. And then, of course, private lessons. So option one is do it yourself. Option two is enroll in these in-person classes or private lessons. But we live in the world we do now, and things are a little tricky with finding in-person classes that allow you that freedom and movement. So the third option is to enroll in online music classes, like a music appreciation class. And this, you could do both option 2 and 3. You can have your child in in-person classes, and you can enroll in an online music class if you're really ambitious, because like an online music class, like a music appreciation class, I should say, is a great enhancer to private lessons, or it's an alternative if you can't afford lessons at this point. So option 3 is what I can offer to help you in, because again, my background is music. So today I would love to invite you to join me in the Composer Detective, a music appreciation course for families. Okay, so that's the Composer Detective. That is George Friedrich Handel. That is actually me dressed up as George Friedrich Handel, and that is my fun twist in bringing music appreciation to families. So there you can see it, the Composer Detective, helping homeschool moms and kids investigate the lives and music of some of the world's great and influential orchestral composers. So the Composer Detective is an easy-to-use, all-in-one online course designed to help you lead your children in investigating orchestra instruments, music, and composers. So they fall in love with listening to music, and they receive all the benefits of boosting their brains in every area of education. So the Composer Detective will give you the tools you need to confidently lead your children in learning about the orchestra without hours of planning, right? We don't want more planning. We didn't really want to do this on our own if you're thinking about option number 3. You want to enroll in an online course and have somebody else help you do it and give you the lesson plans and tell you what to do next, right? So this is an open and go course, and it will give it to you without hours of planning so that you feel like a rock star in presenting this material to your children. And George Friedrich Handel actually guides you through it. You do have to do a few things as a parent, but you will feel like a rock star, or should I say an opera star. Okay, well, how do I do this? How do we do this? I'm going to take you through these 4 steps in learning about the orchestra. Okay, first of all, step number 1, we investigate the instruments of the orchestra. Musical instruments are fun and interesting, so kids will get hooked on learning about the instruments and the music they make. Step 2, investigate the history of the orchestra. With an understanding of the 4 basic eras of orchestral music, the characteristic sounds and forms of each era become familiar, and children will grow to enjoy all kinds of music. So when you know those characteristic sounds and forms, they become familiar, they become like old friends. All right, step 3, investigate the composers of each era. When children get to know the personalities of the composers and learn history, geography, and culture right along with music, the composers and their music will come alive to them. And the 4th step is investigate the music of the composers. So listening to the music of the composers, beginning with short pieces, children become accustomed to the sounds of the instruments and the style of the era and grow to appreciate music from a variety of composers. All right, you see, I want history and music to come alive. So let me tell you that when my children and I go somewhere, like I said earlier, we have traveled to some historical places, and some of our favorite historical places are the ones that make the historical place seem like it still is how it was in that era. So like Plymouth Plantation, they have actors dressed up in the costumes of how those people would have dressed at that time, who play the part of someone who lived in that time, and they stay in character and they interact with you as the person who's coming to the site. They interact with you as if they were still living in that time. So you learn so much history. So it's called living history. So we just love living history. And I want to make history and music come alive. So I approach my course from that same view. I dress up as George Friedrich Handel. And he is the German Baroque composer who wrote Messiah, from which you might recognize the song, the Hallelujah Chorus, right? Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. So here you see me dressed up as George Friedrich Handel, and he is the host. He is your guide in the Composer Detective. He guides you and your children in the fun videos about the orchestra and in the biographies where Handel interviews 9 great influential composers. And yes, I dress up as each composer to bring them to life, and they even interact a little bit with each other in the videos. So, the Composer Detective, how does it start? Well, it starts with a unit on investigating the orchestra, where you and your child learn about the instruments and the eras of the orchestra. Now remember, I said there were 4 steps to really getting into music appreciation, and the first one is to learn about the orchestra and the instruments. So your child will learn about the 4 families of instruments in the orchestra. The strings, I have a couple of them pictured here. The woodwinds. There's some more woodwinds. The brass. Okay, these are all brass instruments. And percussion. I only have one percussion on here. And they will be introduced to the sounds of these instruments in the videos and fun pieces which bring out each instrument, such as A Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, Carnival of the Animals, and Peter and the Wolf. Your child will also learn about the eras of the orchestra, such as the Baroque era, the Classical era, the Romantic era, and the Modern era. Okay, there's 4 eras. With an understanding of these 4 basic eras of orchestral music, the characteristic sounds and forms of each era become familiar, and children will grow to understand and enjoy all kinds of music. Now, after this unit, investigating the orchestra, are 9 composer units. So there are 10 units in the full course of the Composer Detective. So you can see here's the investigating the orchestra. Shows you a little of what you get. I'll just show you a quick screenshot of each of the units and what you get in them. This is, of course, not complete what you get, but just a few sample pages. So we start with George Friedrich Handel, who is your host, but you want to know who he is as you go through the course. So you start with the earliest orchestral composers, who are composers of what is called the Baroque era. So the first composer unit is investigating George Friedrich Handel. And like I said, he's the host of the whole course. And the other Baroque composer is Johann Sebastian Bach. Then we move to the classical era composers and we study Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Ludwig van Beethoven. And then we are pushed into the Romantic era. Beethoven's kind of a crossover composer between classical and Romantic era. And so next we have Johannes Brahms as a Romantic era composer. Then we investigate Antonin Dvorak and Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. So a lot of these composers are German, but for example, Dvorak is Czech. Tchaikovsky is Russian. So we're going to learn a little bit about the cultures and geography of some of these composers as well. So those are our Romantic composers. And then we have 2 modern era composers, Claude Debussy, who's from France, and Igor Stravinsky, who is originally Russian, but then he became a French citizen and then a United States citizen. All right, so if these people sound foreign to you, do not worry. George Friedrich Handel will help you become friends with all of them. So let's take a look at what each unit comes with. You see, when you purchase the Composer Detective, you will have instant access to all the tools you need to teach with the confidence of an opera star, and you will follow a clear path through the phases of learning about the orchestra, and you will know what and how to learn and enjoy classical music as a family. So this course can be used for your whole family. It is geared towards elementary and middle school students with the worksheets, but a high school student can totally use this and use the teacher notes and the lesson plans to go through listening pieces on his or her own time. Now, if you're doing it as a family, that shouldn't be a problem, but we all know teenagers, high school students might not think it is as cool that I am dressed up and bringing living history in the biography videos, but that's okay. You know, they can still use it. You know your child, so you know if it would work for a high school student, but I'm just saying it could be. All right, so I said that I would guide you through the phases of learning. So of course, in investigating the orchestra, you're going to go through 2 phases right there in this one unit, and that is investigate the instruments of the orchestra and investigate the history of the orchestra. So you'll get videos, investigate the instruments of the orchestra video, the orchestra song, and investigate the eras of the orchestra videos. Then you get a playlist of curated performances, which are videos of instrument families and listening pieces composed just for children that help children hear and see the instruments in action. So you also get the teacher notes. Okay, so you get a packet of teacher notes. This is a digital product. I'm just giving you a picture of what this looks like, but it is digital. It is not printed for you. You will have to print it yourself. So the teacher notes includes the lesson plans so that you don't have to prepare the lessons in advance and you know what to do each day. And the student activity pack comes with the worksheets. So you see the worksheets fanned out there. Those are all from the student activity pack. So there's activity sheets and quizzes. There's fill in the blank for when you watch the videos. And this helps your students to interact with the terms and the facts about the instruments and make the learning fun and easy. And then this is just one of the units we'll use. Tchaikovsky, he is the composer who wrote the music for the Nutcracker and the 1812 Overture. So you've probably heard some of his music. So in the composer units, this is where we take you through part 2, and it's actually phases 3 and 4 of the 4 phases that teach you classical music. And the 3rd phase is to investigate the composers of each era, and the 4th phase is to investigate the music of the composers. So these units take you through that. So these units include the biography videos so that you know who this composer is and have fun getting to know him. So there's a video element to these courses, or to this course, to these units. And then of course you get a playlist of curated performances, which are videos. So some of it is proprietary videos. They're original videos that I made, and some of it are videos that I have linked on YouTube as your playlist. But they are curated performances so that you become familiar with and enjoy some of the great pieces and works of this composer, and you get to know a few characteristics of the music and have fun. And sometimes you'll get to learn some fun facts about the pieces if I could find them. And by doing it this way with a video playlist, you also will be exposed to some of the great orchestras and conductors and soloists for as long as they've been filming some of these performances. So some of the people are not living anymore, but we still have video of their performances. So it's a great way to connect with the great orchestras, conductors, and performers of our current time and maybe a bit in the past. Again, you have teacher notes. They include your lesson plans so that you don't have to prepare your lessons in advance and you know what to do each day. And the student activity pack includes the worksheets, the activity sheets, the quizzes, so that you interact with the terms and the facts about the composers, and that makes the learning fun and easy. So you can see here, there's a biography page. I mean, there's a biography video, but I give you a short biography page as well. So you get to see the map. You get to see the exact dates he lived. You see he's from Russia in the Romantic era. Okay, and so you can see there's other worksheets that, like, here's this one here, you can barely see, but it tells you more about the Romantic era. And since Tchaikovsky composed the Nutcracker, we've got the Nutcracker dot to dot. And each composer also has a listening worksheet so that as you listen to pieces, your child can fill out some information about the piece. You don't have to do it every time on every piece, but it gets them learning to listen. And as we saw, listening is the foundation, the cornerstone of development. And it's going to take you a long way with all of the other aspects of development. Okay, so that is what is included in the units of the Composer Detective. So at this point, you're wondering, what is the investment? How much does this cost? Well, if you've shopped around, you know that in-person music classes run about $30 to $50 per month. When I was teaching them in person before I got married, I was teaching and for $36 a month for a half-hour class. And then you also know that private lessons are anywhere from $30 to $50 per half hour. But you can get the Composer Detective normally for $187 for the whole 10 units. This is 10 months of learning. Or if you don't want to do, well, each unit you could do, there's a month worth of learning in it, but really you could extend that a lot longer, and you can take parts of it and just do unit studies over a number of years. So this is a lot of material that can take you through years of learning, honestly. Do it all in 1 year if you want to. But if you look at that, that's just over $18 per unit, $18 a month. But it's actually on sale right now for 25% off, but the sale ends tonight at 11:59 p.m. So you're going to want to grab this. So with 25% off, instead of $187, it is about $141. So that's just over $14 per unit if you buy the whole thing. But I also sell it. I sell each individual unit. Units are normally $29 individually, but with 25% off, it's $21.75. Or you can get a bundle. A bundle includes 4 units. It includes investigating the orchestra and then 3 composers. So I sell those as volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. And if you're in classical conversations, those correlate right along with the cycles of study. So bundles include 4 units, $87, but 25% off. The sale is $65.25. Okay, so now where do I get it? Here is the URL. Okay, you're going to want to go to https://justclassical.com/composer-detective-may. Okay, I'm having this 25% off sale here in May. You are going to need to use a code though to get that 25% off. So make sure you use Get Music to get your 25% off. The code is Get Music, all caps. Okay, so if you are ready to take the leap, here's what you're going to want to do. You need to go to this URL, justclassical.com, composer, detective, May, right? And you're gonna look at the sales page. I go through all the details again for you of what is included in the composer detective, the benefits of music. And then at the bottom of the page, you can scroll, you can click on any of the big orange buttons and they will take you to a final checkout area, and you can look at all the options and you will see that you can buy the full course or any unit or any bundle. And as you click on which option you want, you click the big orange button underneath the option you want, and then you go to the checkout page. And you'll have to look around. Sometimes it's a little hard to find, but there is a place that asks if you have a coupon code. So you'll want to click on the coupon code area and you're going to type in there, Get Music, and it'll take your 25% off. So once you fill out the form and you choose your method of payment, you enter your credit card information, then you can check out. And after your payment has gone through, you'll receive an email confirmation, and then you'll have instant access to all the videos, all the worksheets, or the packet. It's a teacher notes packet and the student activities packet. You'll have access to those, and you can get started on your music learning and boosting your brain, your child's brain, and finding enjoyment together in studying music. All right, so I'm just gonna stop sharing and see if there are any questions about what I've shared today. Thank you for joining me today on the importance of music in your homeschool. And I hope that you've been blessed by this information. I hope you will join me in the Composer Detective. I'm Justina from Just Classical. Thanks for joining me.